Hey everybody, Daily Prospect Notes screen record here on Sunday, June 13th. Going to be a little bit different than the typical screen record this week just because of what we have going on over at the site where we're updating a couple things actually. We're updating draft rankings. We're updating the Pro 100 and posting our first mock draft of the year up at the site early this week. So I would doubt that there's going to be like daily prospect notes in a traditional sense this week, but still going to be plenty of content at the site in the prospect realm. So I wanted to take through the rankings for the draft. Well, actually, as I'm sitting here recording this, again, FanGraphs.com, go to the prospects page. You can either go to the prospects homepage and access this stuff, or just go directly to the board. Minor league stat leaderboards, and all that stuff is over here. But mostly what we're going to focus on today is the rankings that Kevin Goldstein and I do for the site. So if you head over here already, actually, it's already live on the site here, the updated Pro 100. And you can see the guys with the arrows next to their names are the ones who have moved. Some of these I'm going to take away, like Gore moved a little while ago, not in this like last pass, so I'll probably like do away with some of the arrows for guys like that. But come over and check this out. You can see who's moved based on the up down arrows, and we'll have a post at the site early this week to run through some of these guys as well. For sure, some of them Kevin and I disagree about to some extent. We kind of split the baby on Alek Manoah, who I would have closer to like 100 overall, and KG would probably have closer to like 40 overall. I've got Manoah like somewhere in this range here with like these guys who Gregory Santos, Cade Cavalli, and stuff. Who I think there's relief risk with Manoah still ultimately. So short of getting into the specifics of all these guys, I'm going to run through a couple of them now for the screen record and let folks come over to the site to check out the rest of the stuff. So Riley Green moved from somewhere close to here, up here to like in this mix with these other high upside young 20-somethings, Witt through Corbin Carroll basically. Saw Corbin Carroll at the D-backs game Friday night. He's still in a sling. Even though his shoulder injury occurred several weeks ago, so that's kind of scary. But I guess you can see it is a season-ending injury that occurred like very early in the season. So I suppose I should have assumed it was severe in a way that maybe if there would still be results from, like that he's dealing with. But Corbin was at Ohtani's start here in Arizona, and he's still in a sling. But Riley Green moves up. Probably just should have been here from the beginning. No change on Matt Manning, even though he had a rough start. Still believe in the body, the athlete. Like that's just long term what succeeds at pitching, and so he's there. We've taken a pretty light touch with some of these guys, who I think we moved like just shy of 20 players or something like that a little bit. Like Tristan Casas moved from like 50th overall to 42nd overall, but his future value changed. So we give him the up arrow, even though he only moved a couple of spots nominally, or ordinally, rather. Royce Lewis is another one where I should just get rid of this arrow because he moved down when he got hurt. Noelvi Marte, belongs in this group here with like Jason Dominguez and Ronnie Mauricio and Jose Barrero, Ney Garcia, Jazz Chisholm, like the high risk, super high upside, up the middle type guys. Hunter Green, after his delivery and his body kind of changed post TJ and during the quarantine where like he was at the alt site with a different arm slot all of a sudden, he has righted the ship in a big way and looks unbelievable. So he's up. Spencer Howard slides because his injury stuff and velo is inconsistent. Gabriel Moreno hasn't really moved very much. He was already on the 100 entering the year. Future value is still the same. Just prefer him to some of the other catchers at this point. Jarren Duran, if you look at Jarren Duran's batted ball data, you can see some of the results of the swing change. I mean, you can see him in the dingers for sure. Obviously, the strikeout rate is way up as well compared to the years that he was asserting himself on the scene. But here's where it makes the real difference here. If we look at the batted ball data, you can see the ground ball rate from his early career, where he's putting balls in play on the ground at roughly half the time. Now this is way different. There's enough of a sample to conclude yes, the swing change that Boston made, has made a substantive difference here. His instincts in center field are still not very good, but there's real power here now. So even if he's not a true center fielder, I think that there's this is still where I think the defense is. Although I could maybe do some film work on that to reinforce that, but there's definite game power here that wasn't before. So we've moved Duran, and then some of these other names are pretty self-explanatory. Gunnar Henderson was a pick to click for us entering the year. Folks want to try to get out ahead of the guys who we expect are going to be in the 100 at some point who aren't right now. Go to this picks to click article. This is hey, who that we like that isn't on the 100 yet is going to be in a year. And so far the progression on this has been okay. Reed Detmer's velo is up. We're not ready to move him in there yet. We want to see if it holds throughout the rest of the summer. There's Henderson. He moved in. Soderstrom moved in already. Cade Cavalli has moved in. Jordan Walker's moved in. I would tell you Poisson is move on from him. He and Eric Pena both are highly unlikely to move in at this point. Greg Jones we talked about and aren't ready to do it yet, but he's on that trajectory. Who are some of the other ones? Yeah, Diego Cartaya, same thing. On that track, not ready to do it yet. Shea Langeliers has moved in. Cal Raleigh also, we talked about it, aren't quite ready to do it, but feels like that's likely to happen. Manoa's moved in. And then, Bolin had a TJ, so that's out. And then, you can see some of the power reliever guys are more about hey, if you're on a fantasy team and need strikeouts, watch these guys rather than the top 100. So that's that. But yeah, so the top 100 has been updated. Go check it out, see who's moved, and there will be a corresponding post talking about why they moved. Let's get to the draft stuff. So still on the site, I have not pushed these live yet as of sitting here Sunday. I'll show you what's changed in the background here. But these are the preseason draft rankings, okay? So just from sheer busyness, these haven't been updated on the site, but have been being updated in the background. This is the sheet that KG and I are passing along as we're working on our mock and updating our rankings. You can see Kevin's in here now, actually. And sometimes you'll see, anonymous names in here from sources who we're shuttling this sheet around to. But these are the way the draft rankings are going to look. They'll look more like this. This isn't totally final. This is just what we're passing around to folks in the industry for feedback. But this is more like what they're going to look like when they get pushed to the site. But I wanted to check in again on what we had before the season started. Leiter, Rocker, McLean. McLean had a rough start right at the ship, is still likely to go inside the top 10 or so picks. I'd be happy taking him there. I do think he's a shortstop. Do think that it's a plus bat with below average power, but maybe there's more in-game power than the raw just because the quality of the contact is so good. Leiter has held serve, not necessarily as the numero uno guy, but definitely as a 50 future value. The kind of college pitcher who ends up going in the top 5-ish picks in a typical year. He's not Strasburg or whatever. He's nice, but not incredible. Rocker, no matter what you think of Rocker, what you're getting is volatility. So he's fallen. The stuff has just been up and down and then up again here in his last outing here at Super Regionals. But this has just been the case with this guy since high school, really since his senior year of high school. There's a reason Kamar got to college, and it's because his stuff tanked closer to the draft when he was a high school senior, and that sort of happened again. So Rocker, definitely there's a chance that peak Rocker that everyone has seen and what made him a household name among among casual baseball fans even is in there, and there's a chance that that's what he is consistently in the future. But there's also a chance that what we've seen pretty consistently from him, which is inconsistency, is just follows him for chunks of his career. So he has slid. I had Khalil Watson at 4 coming into the year. That was high compared to the general consensus, and that's turned out to be right. This is just the most electric tool set in the draft. Definitely there's risk here, but it's an up-the-middle player with premium bat speed. Jordan Lawler's more the safe version of this. He's 19, almost a full year older than Watson. Cement's a little drier on the body, and the skill set's more polished than it is upside with Lawler. Jaden Hill got hurt, and this was probably too high anyway. This is a guy whose fastball shape plays way down. Marcelo Meyer, big on him for the last couple of years. He's been up here in this draft class just because he was on Keone Cavaco's high school team. Saw him as a sophomore, and it was just clear he belonged somewhere close to here. But he's moved up. He's going to be our number 1 guy. As you can see sort of how this, we got multiple sources in here now, just talking. But, Marcelo Meyer is going to be number 1. Actually, on the overall list, he'll be close to 50th overall. And you'll see we'll have in this top 100 column, any one of the guys who are 50 future values and above will just tell you where they belong on the overall 100 on the pro list. So look for that coming up. Go over to the site and check it out. It's just probably live now if you're seeing this. Henry Davis, the catcher from Louisville, has just performed all year. He's making contact. He's got huge strength-driven power. Might not be a catcher, but as far as hitters in the draft are concerned, he's the safest. Probably enough feel to hit and power there that even if he's not a catcher, he's still a good big leaguer at first base or DH or whatever. So he's going to be him. This is basically the 50 future value tier is these 5 names. Then, we've had some shifting, obviously, if we're looking at last year's list. Like, Judd Fabian strikes out a ton. He's still not 21 yet, and, was among the college home run leaders and plays a premium position, but it's very rare for anyone to strike out as much as he has and be anything at all. And, the Jaron Kendall comp is pretty apt here. There's other stuff with Kendall, makeup stuff that is maybe suboptimal where, with Fabian, I don't really know. But he's definitely slid. Max Ferguson, who crushed in 2020 and then looked incredible in the fall of 2020 at practice, had a terrible season. I still am intrigued by him, but he definitely is not going in the middle of the first round. He feels more like a guy who I would take a buy low on in the back of round 3, but a lot of teams just have in rounds 5 through 7. And then there's a lot of the guys who have held where they belong is Frelick, who's moved up basically because Hill and Fabian have slid down, but Frelick's basically the same guy. Adrian Del Castillo's kind of slid. Benellis is basically still here just because he's performed and a lot of the college hitters have not. There's this vacuum in the back of the first round for college bats and college pitchers too. And so I do think Benellis still ends up going close to this. But entering the year 18, this will end up being a little bit high. He's probably more in this sort of range. And the same goes for most of these guys. Jordan Wicks is a mid-first round guy, lefty from Kansas State with a changeup in command. Andrew Painter's the big prep arm, 6'6", 210. He's of that type. Josh Baez is the big prep bat, barely 18, huge power, has some Giancarlo Stanton vibes, but also the track record of Northeast college bats is pretty terrible. Benny Montgomery is he's a little older, more likely to be up the middle than Baez. Swing is weird, but he has made contact. But again, this is a Pennsylvania high schooler, so Northeast prep bats. Harry Ford's moved up ahead of these guys. Is maybe a sneaky top 10 pick at a discount, perhaps. And then there's been a lot more movement after this. Gunnar Hoagland, I think, goes way above this, even though he's having a TJ, et cetera, et cetera. So after this, the rankings coming into the year are pretty, bad, I guess. There's definitely just more attrition and variability in this mix. We didn't have a 2020 season, so I feel like that's natural, but still doesn't feel great to have some of these. I don't know where I was relative to others on McGreevy. I ended up not liking him in my in-person look, but this is closer Like he did at least belong sort of in this mix coming into the year. He probably belonged closer to 50th, to be honest with you. So let's look at where things are at now. Let's see if some of these sources have texted me here. Oh, hold on. I have to. All right, sorry. I have to do something. I had to do something in WordPress real quick, and now I got to text Kevin again. Okay. All right, so where things are shaping up now, and actually some of the feedback we're getting from sources is going to influence this again before it goes live on the site. But two Peyton Wilsons. Okay. Meyer, Davis, Lawler, Leiter, Watson. Again, this is our 50 future value tier. And actually, it's different than this even. It's going to be more like this. Watson and then... Yep. It's going to look more like this at the top. And let's see. Just goofing with the spreadsheet. I wonder some of the other feedback that we're getting here live. You know, so people look at Matt Mikulski, the lefty at Fordham, and see stiffness and relief risk, and I think that's fair. His pitch execution is better than that. If you look at how consistently he locates his changeup, it doesn't. I know it looks weird, but he still has command. So as in terms of the way his stuff lines up compared to the other college arms toward the back of the first round, I'm just in on him. And if he falls short of starting and ends up a lefty multi-inning power reliever with like upper 90s gas and a plus changeup, that's fine too. And I'd still take that in the back of the first round if you told me that was what he was going to be. Some of the other stuff, like some of these college bats, Wilson, Trimble, Zavala, these are generating some variable opinions. A lot of what you see these guys lined up on the draft is just going to be Kevin's taste and my taste, rather than like allowing ourselves to be heavily influenced by the industry in this instance. I think that we're just going to put our foot down on some of these guys. Connor Norby's the name who we've been told to move up. So as we've passed this around, this is the name consistently that I'm hearing is too low here. At 48, we have him. He probably belongs up in this mix with these other college bats, close to like Ty Black and Zavala and such. So let's change that. And so, yeah, we're still working on receiving feedback back here. I think we're going to go through pick 71-ish, just because that's where the end of the second round goes, and then we'll work on continuing to expand this as the next month rolls around, tighten it, expand it, and have like 100, 150 guys somewhere in there by the actual draft day, just so that when it comes time to move guys onto the pro list, we just have as many of them done already as possible. And there will be some post-draft work done to understand, like, oh, okay, like, turns out that this guy we didn't have anything on him at all, and he should just be a 40, or he should just be a 35 plus or whatever, and go on to the team list. So I think the interesting thing to share with people right now is, like, where would these guys rank on the 100 as we're sitting here in, like, our master spreadsheet where we're doing a lot of other stuff that ends up feeding the site. You can see Marcelo Meyer, 50th overall, Henry Davis, 51st, Jack Leiter, 54th, Khalil Watson, 64th, and Jordan Lawler, like 126th. All these guys are still in the big, fat 50 future value tier where we're just saying kind of like, hey, either it's a relatively lower variance everyday big leaguer, or it's a high variance like potential star, but more bust potential, which is like the case with Watson and Meyer. Whereas the rest of these guys feel a little bit safer. Jordan Lawler, like I said, he's a year older, which is not necessarily working in his favor, but you have a better idea of what he is. So, medium variance on Lawler, high on Meyer and Watson, even though they're all high school shortstops. Lighter medium, Davis medium, like the college guys feel a little bit more like a sure thing. All right, so if we want to take a look at, so you can see that basically Meyer through Watson are all in this like 50 to 64 overall range, whereas Lawler's towards the back of the 100. If I go to the Pro 100 to show you guys what that means, to kind of put that in context, Jason Dominguez is 49th right now, and so Marcelo Meyer would slot just behind him. And then Henry Davis, who we like more than Joey Bart at this point, just because the bat-to-ball feel with Davis is better. Although Bart is a much, much better defender than Davis. There's some give and take there, but we prefer Davis just because of the stability with the bat-to-ball. So we would stack Meyer right behind Dominguez, and then Davis right behind him because we want him to be ahead of Joey Bart on the overall 100. And then lighter. Again, like you've got a great comp here with Emerson Hancock, who was a top pick in last year's draft. We like Leiter a little bit more than Hancock just because of the fastball shape. Leiter's got that backspin, flat angle fastball, the power pitcher's fastball, whereas Hancock's more of like two-seam action, where like the utility for missing bats is a little bit more limited with that fastball. And so we would stack Leiter in front of Hancock. So you see those first three guys go boom, boom, boom right here, close to 50th overall. And then with Watson, we like him ahead of some of these maybe more sure thing type shortstops. Jeremy Pena, who's hurt this year, Oswald Peraza, who we were big on coming into the year. These are more like, hey, these guys can really pick it at shortstop, and they're solid offensive players. Not potential stars, but they're close to the big leagues. They're kind of slam dunk like everyday guys. Nolan Jones is sort of flopping at AAA right now. George Valera's got some swing and miss risk. Edward Cabrera with the Marlins has been hurt a bunch and we don't like his fastball shape either. And then we get to Gabriel Moreno, where it's like, hey, this is a really good athlete up the middle position. A sneaky chance to be like a star level performer. And we think Watson kind of fits in this bucket as well. Heliot Ramos is another guy like that, where it's like, hey, there's maybe some swing and miss risk here, but there's impact power, and there's that type of stuff going on in this range. There aren't as clean apples to apples guys here with Watson as there are with the other three guys I mentioned in this 50-55 range. If I was gonna apples to apples Khalil Watson with some of the other shortstops who are close to his age. All right, let's just filter it, shall we? I'm gonna add the second baseman too, because Watson's probably a second baseman in the end. So I'm just looking at the middle infielders here. Tyler Freeman doesn't have the power potential that Watson does. I think you could say Orelvis Martinez is an interesting apples to apples for Watson, just because with the power potential here as well. And he's at low A, whereas Watson is probably going to be drafted and get sent to rookie ball. There's a bunch of other things that actually this is not a bad. Maybe this is an argument that we're low on Orelvis. But then you get to the power potential with Perdomo and Vargas is not as overt. Peguero too, it's more like contact oriented. Not sure there's going to be a lot of power because of the way the swing works though, not because of raw juice, which is the case here with Perdomo and Vargas. But so yeah, it does feel like you want him behind Noelvi, Mauricio, Barrero, where it's so clear there's a ton of power potential. You would think, Mauricio, maybe it's not quite as clear. Rocchio definitely doesn't, Peraza, Rocchio, and Pena are, less likely to have power, whereas Gonzalez, Bush, they're, not as likely to have defensive value. They're like, okay, second baseman. You hope they can play second base, especially with Bush. Gonzalez has a shortstop pedigree, but wasn't good defensively there in college. So just sort of have him bucketed at second base. But yeah, if anything, looking at things this way, it's like, are we low on Aurelvis Martinez? Should he be closer up where we have Watson, if I'm apples to apples in guys? But that's sort of how we do it. We're, want to try to apples to apples guys in ballpark where they belong on the overall continuum. And that's how we arrived at that place with the draft prospects. Colton Cowser, this is the guy who I dig this guy a lot. Like, I think this is the best bat to ball skill in the whole draft is Colton Cowser. So yeah, look for the rankings on the site tomorrow, or I guess today when you're watching this. It'll look sexy and not at all like the spreadsheets that I'm showing you, which is why I'm going to end the screen recording now so I can go do the rest of that stuff. So thanks for joining me on another weekly edition of Daily Prospect Notes, the screen record. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. It's going to be $117 every day here in Arizona for the next little bit. So don't know how much extended spring training stuff I'm going to do coming up here as extended wraps up and we get into the AZL and GCL stuff. But I know I'm prioritizing the Cubbies, the Brewers, and the A's, which are the last 3 pro lists that I've got to do. So be on the lookout for those coming up at the site as well. Thanks a lot. Talk to you guys next week.